This is All India Radio. In the program Insights, now we bring you a discussion on Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense sector. The participants are retired Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur, defense expert, and Ajay Banerjee, journalist.
Good evening. We are discussing the light combat aircraft Prachada, which was inducted into the Indian Air Force yesterday at Jodhpur. The LCH, as it is called, was made totally with indigenous help and indigenous work at the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. How important is this, AVM Bahadur sir, keeping in mind that the project to start off or having such a helicopter which can operate in the high altitude of Himalayas started after the Kargil War?
It's a very good step that has happened yesterday with the induction of the light combat helicopter, whose genesis is the Kargil War. During the Kargil War, we realized that we do not have a helicopter that can deliver armament at altitudes above 15,000 feet safely. We lost Mi-17 helicopter and unfortunately 4 crew with that, and the helicopters had to be withdrawn out. So the LCH was born from the Kargil War. The HAL was brought in, and it is a combined effort, certainly most of it in HAL, where this LCH was born from the advanced light helicopter, the Dhruv. The Dhruv's transmission system, that is, its rotors, its engines, its gearbox, they are the same in the light combat helicopter. So we had an advantage. We had something to fall back upon, and the LCH was designed around it with a 2-man crew only, whereas Dhruv is basically a cargo carrying it. So the LCH Prachanda has got a 2-man crew, pilot, and a weapon system operator, and it's a dedicated attack group. It's good that we have got it in our fleet.
Yeah, when you mentioned about its transmission, I'll bring you to the engine, sir. A special engine called the Shakti engine was developed in a joint venture between HAL and Safran. The engine can fly to 21,500 feet. Sir, could you explain to our listeners, why do attack helicopters don't fly beyond a certain level? Because as we learn from available international literature, that the Boeing Apache also, which is part of the IAF fleet, does not fly beyond 20,000 feet.
Any flying machine is designed around something what are called the air staff requirements, the operational requirements. We do not foresee enemy positions or enemy to be attacked above 20,000 feet because they don't have posts and we don't have hills where all these things will be there. So, because if you greatly expand the requirement of the envelope that the aircraft is to fly in, then there are other issues that come up. So you require more powerful engines, you require bigger and more powerful rotors. That increases the weight of the helicopter for nothing because you will never use it at those altitudes. So 20,000 feet is the ceiling. So the Apache may be flying till 20,000 feet, but it cannot deliver armament at those altitudes. The LCH can, and enough trials have been done with the light combat helicopter. So that's where the altitude part comes in. Similarly, the speed, the turning radius, the maneuverability, all that is designed as per the operational requirement.
Sir, the LCH has also heralded or rather signaled the importance of Atmanirbharta or self-reliance, which the Prime Minister Modi often refers to. The advent of this helicopter and other equipment like the Tejas and the Tejas Mark 1A, the development of the Tejas Mark 2, the advanced medium combat aircraft for the Indian Air Force, and of course the big ticket of the INS Vikrant, which was commissioned last month. How do you see the Atmanirbharta going forward, sir?
The self-reliance or indigenization and modernization. These are two aspects which have a totally different timeline. Any armed force wants to be modern as on date because the adversary is also doing the same thing. He is modernizing. On the other hand, indigenization, basically creating research and development environment and a manufacturing ecosystem takes decades. So modernization, I want it today. The indigenization will take decades. So it has to be well matched and it is spread over various terms of government, various terms of the chiefs, the air, naval and army chiefs, and several political dispensations. So it is very important that since Atmanirbharta in the military sector or in the national security sector concerns national security of the nation, there is continuity in the thought process. There is a political continuum in this effort to attain the self-sufficiency in military hardware. So it's so very important that we continue the way we are going.
Sir, we have had in the last financial year ending March 2022, we have had an export of around 13,000 crore rupees. The target is around 35,000 crore rupees by 2025. The Defence Ministry has also made it clear that the target of local indigenous production has to touch around 1.75 lakh crore rupees in the next 3 or 4, 5 years. We are doing well. Slowly and gradually we are becoming a power. We are a small little exporter, probably number 20 from the top. We are 23 on the list of exporters, but we also remain an importer. How is this dichotomy to be solved, sir?
The point is that the big ticket items are things that we will still need to import to ensure that our armed forces stay modernized. I'll take the example of the Air Force. While we are getting there with the Tejas Mark 1A, which will start coming in 2024, and Tejas Mark 2 later, AMCA somewhere in 2030. What do we do in between with the squadron strength going down? So there is that project of 114 multi-role fighters which have to be imported. Otherwise the squadron strength will continue to go down. There would be a similar thing happening with the Navy and the Army. So there has to be a good match between the import and indigenization that has to be dovetailed. So one of the steps that the government is taking is that whatever is imported, a few initial items, pieces may come from abroad, but the condition is put there that the rest will be made within the country. So this is a nice step that is happening. We should not fall in the license production gap. We have to learn and make it on our own with critical items being made within the country.
Sir, you have made a very valid point that license production, we should not fall for it. Please explain to our listeners, license production was during the times of the Soviet time when we took the Sukhois and earlier the MiGs also partly. How is it different, license production and making it on our own?
I'll just give examples like 2023 you have already said. The MiG-21 was under license production from the erstwhile USSR. The Sukhoi is similar. The Cheetah, the helicopters, is on license production from France. So that's a screwdriver technology in the sense that the country from where you are importing or the manufacturing entity, it gives you please do this and then do this, and it does not give you the basic knowledge or basic information.
Sir, very importantly, you reveal how this Atmanirbharta is important strategically. We will talk about the land systems of the Indian Army. We are making our own tanks. We are making our own artillery guns called the Dhanush and the A-tanks. Also, the Army is also inducting the light combat helicopter. What does this mean, sir? The land battle will also be now fought on indigenous weapons.
No doubt about it. But just remember, when we are talking of the UAVs that we talked of, they are the small UAVs. The long-range UAVs, the surveillance UAVs, we are still dependent on imports. And unfortunately, that's an area where HAL has not performed. Let's face facts. The Rustam is nowhere on the scene. So we've had to import from Israel. We've had to lease, the Navy has had to lease Predator drones from the United States. So that's an area that needs development. The small sector, the private sector, has got onto the small scale UAVs, which is a good sign. The swarms which they are designing, once again, they are small UAVs. But the bigger ones, we are still importing. And that is one area which we really have to focus on. When it comes to the other aspects of for example, the tanks, the guns, I think we are making progress on that. There may be issues of the weight of the Arjun tank, but I suppose that is being addressed.
Good to hear that, sir. Sir, when we talk about self-reliance, it also means there's a lot of talk about restructuring the forces into a modern fighting force. Partly it is said in strategic circles that part of this restructuring will also, which is told as the teeth-to-tail ratio. To explain to our listeners, teeth-to-tail ratio means that there will be more fighting force and less of the support force. Will this also, Atmanirbharta, bring about a change in the teeth-to-tail ratio, sir? Will it also help any manner?
I'm not too sure how the two can be linked because we are talking in terms of manpower for war fighting when you're talking of tooth to tail ratio, and how that one way of reducing that is by modernization. So with the computerization, the computing power that is available, and the opening up of space, then maybe there will be some redundancy in manpower. But it's actually a fallacy to say that you have a drone flying, you require less manpower. No, that's not the case because the support structure is quite heavy even for a medium-sized drone. So we need to be clear when we talking of reducing the to-tail ratio, which is what should be done. Which are the areas that we can cut? Which are the areas that the armed forces need not do on their own so that you can do that by outsourcing? These are aspects that need to be looked into so that the budget that is allotted by the finance minister is utilized for enhancing the combat power.
The Ministry of Defense has come out with 3 separate lists in the past 1 year called the indigenization lists. This means that these products after a certain cutoff date will not be imported. Helicopters like the LCH inducted yesterday are also on that list. which will not be imported beyond a cut-off date. You think, sir, the LCH is a mature enough platform that should be on the indigenization list? And also, I'm sure you have seen those products which are on the indigenization list, that they will not be imported. Can we meet those targets? Can our domestic industry, the private industry, and the public sector industry meet the targets of indigenizing the foreign imports?
Since I retired quite some time back, so I frankly don't know, I don't have access to classified information. But all I can say is that the negative lists have to be monitored very carefully so that action is taken in time in case local products don't match up in terms of quality and in terms of delivery schedule, that is numbers, at the right time. And then you'll have to give concession to that. So this is something that has to be monitored on literally a daily basis or maybe a monthly basis so that action is taken in time so that the fighting potential or the combat potential of the armed forces does not come down. Having a negative list or having them is a good, shall I say, push to industry, both private and public, because the private sector knows that these areas are where we can venture and the armed forces would come to us and not go to a foreign manufacturer. So that's an impetus to them to work. But once again, as I said, in the right quality, in the right time frame and in the right numbers is what the armed forces should get. And if the negative lists have to be tweaked, they should be.
Sir, we are also, the readers and our listeners would be very keen to hear about the budgets, because the budgets which decide that what is to be purchased, what is not to be purchased. And by indigenization, will we save on some budget of import bill also?
It depends on what we are talking of. For example, aero engines. It's niche technology. Nobody will give them to you. And I'm afraid we will have to continue to import aero engines from abroad. But there are so many other things of lesser value in terms of expertise that we can certainly manufacture. And as I said, private sector, the startups that we have got, they are our backbone and they need to be encouraged. So would the budget numbers be helped by having local manufacture? Yes, I do think so. Because the cost of labor in India is less. But once again, it gets down to if we have to import the chips, if we have to import certain key components of what you are indigenizing within the country, then I'm afraid the balance has to be checked every time. So while we continue to make the Tejas Mark 1A, the Tejas Mark 2, but the aero engines will still be the GE 404 from America and 414 for Tejas Mark 2. So there is no shortcut to this.
By shortcut, you mean, sir, the country needs to develop key technologies like aero engines or something?
Absolutely. We have got the ISRO launching rockets to space. But that is simpler in a way within quotes than making an aero engine of a high thrust. That is niche technology. The Chinese have not been able to master it yet for their J-20, the stealth aircraft of theirs, and they are using the Russian engine. So this will take time. And when you say Atmanirbhar, let's get over the idea that all components in a weapon system need to be indigenous. It's not necessary. The aero engines, for example, are made by just 5 or 6 manufacturing companies in the world. So that's where diplomacy and international relations come in. We can continue to manufacture fighter aircraft and maybe import engines for a certain amount of time, because the amount of money that is required to be put in to make an aero engine, for example, requires, in case you want a payback, you require numbers, and that can come only by exports. If the nation requires just 200, for example, Tejas Mark 2 or AMCA, you don't break even with the amount of money that you put in that airway. So it's a balance that needs to be struck between which high-end items need to be manufactured within the country.
Right, so you have put it in a very good perspective that the exports are growing and we need to be focused on what we need to make on our own, and be clear that where we are headed, the exports now targets are to make it around 3,000 crore rupees, and that is one of the positive signs. The helicopters like the LCH give confidence to the domestic and the private industry that we can do it better. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you, Ajay.
You were listening to a discussion on Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense sector. The participants were retired Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur, defense expert, and Ajay Banerjee, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.